What's up, good people? Just wanted to kind of come on here. I just want to know, do you guys feel like this is our moment? And I know you're probably asking, what moment you're talking about, Mark. I mean, the moment where we as a country finally realize that racism, number one, is wrong. Number two, it cost. Number three, it is going to kill this country completely. Are we at this moment now? And the reason I'm asking is because there are times that I feel that we've had opportunities to do stuff even in history. And somehow we have squandered it. We can even go back to the point where the Europeans came to America and they had a moment. They had a moment to actually work with the Native Americans, and they squandered it. They end up killing them. They end up slaughtering them. And they continued. Then they brought in slaves and they slave people. But they had a moment. They had a moment of not having slaves. They had a moment of that, the Civil War. We had a moment to stop what was happening. And we did stop it. The Union won. We got rid of slavery. Boom. Yes. Yay. But after we did that, instead of incarcerating the people who enslaved folks, instead of putting them in chains, or instead of actually unaliving them, like they did so many of my people and Native Americans, they sent them back and they became judges and police officers and all those different things. But we had a moment. But yet we kicked the can down the road, and we had another moment in the 60s. We had moments in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s to get rid of it. And a lot of people think that the 1965 Voter Rights Bill was our moment. Yes, we did turn the page, but somehow we still had so many different programs that still teetered on things that didn't allow, such as credit. If it wasn't for African Americans, most of this country would not have credit, because they needed credit to demonize people. This country is built upon racism, and a lot of it is because they don't want black people to have access to the things that are important for them, to the things that everybody just wants to have. A lot of these entitlement programs, you guys fed those who believe this, you guys fed into the narrative that only black people benefited from these entitlement programs. And that is not true. These entitlement programs were never created for us. The the New Deal, that was never created for us because black people could not get it. Social Security, it wasn't created for us because black people could not get it. Unemployment, it wasn't created for us because black people could not get it at the time. The VA loan, black people could not get it at the time. And we had to fight for what was right. We had to fight for what was equitable for all mankind living in America. But we keep building on the moment of racism. And I just want to know now, will America take the time out to say, hey, you know what? Racism cost us. The reason we got to pay high college tuition has nothing to do about the fact that the cost is going up. It has everything to do with black people. Racism cost colleges because colleges were free. This is why, and they wouldn't allow black people to be in college. This is why we had to create the historical black college. And that was a government program because white colleges would not allow black people into their universities. And that's why we call them PWIs, the primary white college, primary white institute. So I feel like our moment is now. And the moment has never been on black people. The moment has always been on white people. The moment has always been that, we have to stop this in its tracks. A lot of white people have benefited from the Homestead Act. And if you don't know what that is, there were so many of them, but there was only one benefit of the Homestead Act that benefited black people, and that was 40 acres and a mule. And that never happened. But all four of them happened for white people. A lot of white people wouldn't have land today if it wasn't for the Homestead Act. So if you want to talk about entitlement programs, black people had nothing to do with entitlement programs. That was a lie that was fed to you from the billionaires so that they can keep picking your pockets, as Lyndon Baines Johnson have said. So I just want to know, we have this moment now, and what are we going to do about it? What are white people going to do about it? Are they going to rise up and say this is absolutely wrong? And I think the call and the awakening is happening within white people, and they're realizing that DEI was never about black people, right? The sensible white people understood that. They understood that DEI was never about black people. It was about equality for people who had disabilities, people who were being fair and ruled out because of their skin tone, people being unruled out because of they may have had an amputation or anything of that nature. And I think people are realizing that those things. And as we continue to go forward in the month of March, something is going to explode. Something is going to happen. And I hope that people are realizing that it's because of racism. It's because of racism why this country can never grow to the potential that it needs. We are a beautiful country, mixed of different cultures. We are a melting pot. But somehow we have to allow the white elites to continue to reign supreme in America. And what's happening right now is that 30% of the population is white male, 30% only, but they're controlling about 80% of the government. That's what's happening. And the brainwashing is happening all over in America. If you were to ask yourself, how many white people are there all over the world? It's only like 17%. Everyone else is in color. So this narrative of white supremacy, it's only fueled by fear. It's only fueled by what people think that's going to happen. And that's why I said, are we going to take this moment to change it? Are we going to really look in the face of racism and say that if I have this Homestead Act or if I have this entitlement program, why can't my fellow person of color have the same thing? We're no different. You know, I think a lot of farmers, especially in Nebraska, are waking up and to realizing that, hey, we have no one to pick our farms. It's not that the immigrant community picks the farms. It's like they do the jobs that no of us want to do at all, especially in Guyman, Oklahoma. You have slaughterhouses that's filled of immigrants because Americans don't want to do those jobs, because people come here and say, I can have something. And I believe that we have an opportunity right now to change the page for our kids, even for the environment. There's a lot of crap that's going on in our environment that we are continually allowing it to happen. Do you think our kids in the next 20, 30 years will be able to have drinking water? I mean, those things are very imperative that we really need to look at. Are we going to be walking around here with ozone masks in the next 20 years? So I think that's something that we have to really look at and say, this is our moment for change. And I really hope we meet the moment and not get so caught up into what Donald Trump says and what Elon Musk says. Those are two white men who will die soon. Those are two white men who will not be around. And we're allowing these white men to be able to control the hearts and minds, because right now they're the ones who look that they're in power. But keep in mind, as the people, we are strong and we're mighty. I see protests happening all over the country, all over the world, and people are fighting back. And they are even fighting back against the Democrats. They're fighting back against the Republicans, because people are waking up and realizing that we are one. I'm going to say this before I leave. I don't want tragedy to happen to us in order for us to realize and to wake up. I remember 9/11 happened. There was so much of a kumbaya spirit. And then what happened? All of a sudden, we allowed lies. We allowed things to come into our minds. And then we had division. We should not allow tragedy to bring us and to unite us. We need to be able to understand that, hey, I am my brother's keeper. If we're all Americans, we're all should be Americans. And people coming over here for an opportunity, they should come over here for an opportunity. The only people who should be sitting back saying right now that you're not allowed to be here should be the indigenous community. Everyone else are immigrants. And I think we need to understand that we don't own this. We're borrowed time. And I mean that as human beings, and I also mean that as citizens. We're on borrowed time. So it's what are we going to do with the time and the space that is allotted to us? Are we going to have the memory of have that memory of saying that we turned around and our grandkids are now reading about us and say that we allowed this tyrant to take over? Or are our grandkids going to read about us and say that my grandmother, my grandfather fought for us? They stood on the front lines. Doesn't matter race, creed, or color. I remember those freedom fighters. I remember those Union soldiers. I remember those Buffalo soldiers. I remember those people who stood on the front line. Will you stand on the front line to fight for freedom?